Hello, hello, good morning, everybody out there in streaming world. Welcome to another episode of the TMI Show. That's shorthand for the Ted Manila Information Show. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall, way over there in New York City. I'm down here in Washington, D.C. Thank you guys for being here because we're going to bring you way too much information from all around the globe. Right now, Ted, here in D.C., we are anxiously awaiting Emmanuel Macron's arrival to the White House. They say it'll be around noon.
Emmanuel Macron.
Emmanuel.
Although his name sort of looks like macaroon.
I know. So we talk about everything here, in case you can't tell, including making fun of world leaders. We do that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And drop F-bombs, preferably not in the first 8 minutes, Ted.
I know I screwed up last time.
It's mostly Ted.
Yeah, no.
But I do it too.
You're too kind.
Yeah. I do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, my reasoning behind doing it less is because I have a kindergartner and he apparently has been repeating things that I say at school.
Yes. So. It's entirely your fault, Manila. No kindergartner could possibly pick up bad language anywhere other than at home, because thank God our pop culture is so clean and sanitized.
He has been saying some weird stuff.
And people in public, adults never speak, gruffly or obscenely in public in the presence of children. Whenever I see a child, I'm always like, forsooth, a child draws
people
near.
People don't anymore, right?
I will
speak. Don't care.
No, they really don't care.
I try, especially when I see other people's kids. I got to be better with my own kid, but
I used to be. No, I'm terrible that way too.
Yeah, I try to be mindful of that. And old people, I kind of feel bad doing it around
Oh God, you must not know enough old
Joe
people.
Biden's.
Old people give no S's at all. They have seen everything. Old people they're not uptight. Are you kidding? Like, you make it to be like whatever. You're just like,
let's say you're Joe Biden.
He curses like a mofo.
I've heard that. I've heard that he has a really foul mouth and he's, very much a crotchety old man. And there are now articles.
He's a bastard.
I mean, that's
what
I heard. I heard he's really foul mouthed and really just crude and mean to his staff.
And so mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It's finally all starting to come out. So I can't
terrible
wait
to work for.
Yeah, that's what they say. I can't wait for the tell-alls.
I hated Bush, but from everything that I've heard, he was a sweetheart to work for. Very loyal.
Bush Jr. or Senior?
Bush Jr. And he was very sweet, always very concerned, solicitous. His staff adored him. Jimmy Carter also had a good reputation that way. Not so much his wife.
Really?
Trump mostly has a good reputation. Like, if he thinks highly of you, he tends to check in on you. He remembers, if you're suffering, whatever happened with that problem you had.
Yeah, he's very personable, and he was at CPAC, which we'll get to in the back half of the show, because it correlates to the main topic, right, that we're going to be talking about. By the way, we are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So guys, please be sure to like and follow the show. I'm going to remind you guys, probably midway through, we got to do a better job of reminding folks, if you're tuned in and you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, because we are trying to grow.
And on Rumble, you can. And by the way, I didn't really realize this until over the weekend when I was subscribing to producer Robbie's gaming channel, that the subscription on Rumble is hard to find. First of all, we have to be on the air. It doesn't work when we're not on the air. So, but we have a rerun that happens during the daytime, during the afternoon. So you can do it then. That's technically considered on the air. But then you have to basically go to the where you see all the chat and everybody is commenting and talking smack. Then what you do is you go to the bottom of it, almost like where you'd think that you'd be typing in an entry for the chat to say something, and under there, in the dumbest place ever,
is a bad spot.
Is the subscribe button. And so that's what you have to do. And once you find that, but it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how Rumble even stays in business. I mean, this, if you make collecting money hard,
right?
I mean, duh. You don't have to be, Kevin O'Leary to understand that that's not a good profit model,
So today's show, on the back half, Ted and I are going to talk about this media mayhem, at least here in the U.S., the Trump effect, as it were. Maybe not. Joy Reid getting fired, all this big shakeup at MSNBC. I just returned from a second day, the final day at CPAC.
Glutton for punishment.
I know. What did I learn? I think I learned a thing or two about the direction things are going in the media landscape.
Right.
Because
not good, I bet.
It's not good. Because
there's never any good news in media. The only time in my entire life, I'm almost 62 years old, that there's been good news in media was when the alt weeklies exploded in the late 80s, early 90s. And suddenly every city had one or two or even three of these cool
like Village Voice and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the Village Voice, but like the Phoenix New Times, the San Francisco San Francisco Weekly, the Boston Phoenix, all of these.
We have the LA Weekly.
LA Weekly, the worst one of them all, by the way. But it was conservative. An alt weekly should not be conservative. But it's like, the point is, it was suddenly like a new venue that ran cool comics and weird alternative political coverage and held the big daily papers to their feet to the fire. It was good. But that's the last time there was good news in media.
That's not the way anymore. And I'll explain more on the back half of what I saw in my 2 out of 3 days at CPAC. And seriously, boy, are my legs tired. Ran back from CPAC. It was not a pretty sight there, Ted, in more ways than one. And I'll be writing a piece about that later for Slanted Online.
Awesome.
After I, can wrap my head around all the different speeches that were there, the pre-taped speech by Georgia Maloney, trying to act like she was, zooming in live, but she would intersperse like back and forth between active tense and future tense. And I don't know if that's a language barrier. I don't know. Maybe it's like a, translational thing between Italian and English, but it was so evidently pre-taped. It's like, Georgia, lady, it's 4:00 in the afternoon. I know it's 10:00 in Italy. You're not zooming in to talk to us at CPAC. Like, come on. It's not happening.
Italians, the shit could be. They go eat dinner at 11 o'clock at night.
That's true, but I just felt like this was super pre-taped. But we'll talk about it. Other people were there. Robert Fico, the Slovak prime minister, stabbed, shanked,
right. Shivved.
Right. But anyway, let's get to headlines, and then we'll jump into that topic, because I think the media landscape, based on what I can tell, even in Trump world, where CPAC is the gateway into seeing into what the Trump landscape looks like, Ted. And it's not pretty for media, even though, Elon's there, the chainsaw and whatever. I'll get into that later. But yeah, we'll talk about that. Maybe he chainsawed Joy Reid. That's what happened at MSNBC.
Now.
All right,
Reid's always been nice to me. Hi, Joy. I know you're watching. I love you.
I don't. I do not like her. Did not like her show. I don't know her, but I think she was a political hack. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Second half. Here we go.
Germany's mainstream conservatives, led by Friedrich Merz, won the national election there, ensuring that Ukraine has an even stronger supporter in the EU's biggest country. The far-right anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany, also known as AfD, became the nation's second largest political force, scoring number 2 in the election. Merz, who's promising to unite Europe in the face of challenges from Russia and the U.S., is expected to become the country's next leader. On Sunday night, he said that his top priority is to unify Europe. What other German guy wanted to unify Europe? I forget that guy's name. From Austria, Corporal. Anyway, faces of challenges coming from the U.S. and Russia. Both J.D. Vance and Elon Musk openly supported Alternative für Deutschland, Merz's conservatives won 208 seats in the 630-seat Bundestag, while AfD won 152. The three parties in the former governing coalition lost some seats, with the SDP, that's the Socialist Party, falling to 120, and the Greens to 85. The pro-business Free Democrats, which triggered early elections by pulling out of the coalition, failed to get the 5% of the vote that they need to win any seats at all. The Left Party got 64, and the left-wing Sahra Wagenknecht Alliance, catchy, came in just under the 5% hurdle. AfD was jubilant, with leaders vowing to become the country's main party in the next election. This was the largest turnout in modern German elections, with 83% of the electorate turning in a ballot. That's, of course, a lot higher than we ever see here in the United States.
Yeah, she reminds me, the leader of the AfD, she reminds me a little bit of Lisa Kudrow from Friends. But you know,
not as cute.
More right-wing. Right, not as cute and funny, right? But,
oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa Kudrow has this, like, really anxious, nervous, she's like the female version of, like, David Byrne. She's got this, like, bird-like quality.
Yes, very.
And she was just in that movie, in that limited series on Netflix, No Good Deed. She's really good. I've
not seen that one. But can we just take a moment to look at Frederick Merz? What is with the little
Charlie Brown? He's got the Charlie Brown thing, the tuft of hair. I have das Herren Tuften.
Just shave that tuft.
Yeah, that tuft is doing no good to anyone. And
why does everybody have to have matching glasses?
If you don't like that look, that's probably national health care. I can recommend a good haberdasher here in Manhattan. Next time Mr. Merz is visiting the UN, he can pop in and
look,
get a hat.
Everybody has the same cut. Their frames are all the same. Like,
who ever heard of Germans being conformist and that's so unheard of.
Uniting behind
one leader,
Ukraine, who is heavily populated in the West with a certain kind of ideology, Ted, in West Ukraine.
I did not see that coming.
Who would have thunk that this guy, like you alluded to, wanted to unite a new Germany to support the Western Ukrainian government.
By the way, in today's Washington Post, there's an article about Ukraine, and in the caption, very casually, it's talking about whether Ukrainians are considering, now that they can be drafted over the age of 18, whether to send their kids overseas before they turn 18, so that they can evade the draft. And and there's, in the caption, there's like a little protest by little kids, and it's like they're holding Free Azov signs. And and so
Lord.
Nowhere in the caption or in the article is it mentioned that Azov is a highly Nazified movement and battalion, deeply integrated into the political and military system in Ukraine.
Let's not forget the party, the Right Sector with a K, SEK Sector, the Right
and then
Sector.
Also,
literally a political party.
There's almost, whenever you see those pictures of funerals in Ukraine, like military funerals, there's often that red and black flag in the background, displayed next to the national flag, which the national flag of Ukraine is actually kind of cool because it actually has a resonant symbolism. The yellow top, the top half is yellow. That's the sun, and the bottom half is yellow. The wheat, right, and then the sky on the top, right. That's kind of cool. But anyway, but the red and black sign, that's the pro-Nazi. It is from World War II. It's from the collaborationist regime of Stepan Bandera, and who is celebrated all over Ukraine. There's statues, there's postage stamps.
But yet this guy is over here saying that he's gonna unite. He's like, I feel like he's not far enough of a departure from Olaf Scholz, not only in the kind of a dorky, nerdy, like mousy kind of a guy look that he has.
He's not a good looking dude. He looks like Reddy Kilowatt.
Not only that, this, forthcoming chancellor, like he's like really Angela Merkel looks like she could beat him up. But he's not a far enough departure.
Or she could
I
eat
think.
him anyway.
Yes, he's not far enough a departure from Olaf Scholz to save the German economy, which by in part I think was the second biggest issue for
the German economy
voters.
was hobbled in large part because of the Nord Stream pipeline, being blown up. I mean, energy is an incredibly important part of the economy, and if you suddenly have to pay high energy prices, as we know here in the United States, it affects everything. It's one of the reasons that inflation's out of control here.
And look, immigration.
Is that it's not that eggs necessarily, that there's fewer chickens or anything. It's like, but shipping those eggs costs more. That's a part of it.
Well, the reason that AFD, and we're going to have a guest on
at the chicken place costs.
We're going to have a guest on from Germany tomorrow to talk about this and the rise of AFD. But the part of the reason that the German right, and I don't call them, I don't necessarily believe they're the far right. They're just right wing because everybody else is so far to the left, right?
Well, they are a right wing party.
So they're a right wing.
In the United States, they would really not be considered very far right. I mean, they'd probably be. I mean, honestly, they might be slightly to the left of like MAGA and Trump.
Correct.
But because AFD in Germany, they're for a lot of stuff that for example, they're not against. They don't think that they think climate change is happening. They're
less far right than Republicans from Texas, right?
Right.
So, but one of the driving things on their platform, which put them at number 2, that they'll be the number 2 party at the Bundestag, is immigration, which is very similar to the MAGA people here in the U.S. And so we're looking at like B-roll here of all of these immigrants that were migrants. I'm not sure what their status is, obviously, but all of these people that are of non-German ancestry walking through, and this is what their, part of their major platform was. They want to end all migrant status visas.
In fairness, look, the truth is the United States doesn't even have a migrant issue compared to like Europe. The volume and the percentage by population of migrants that they've absorbed over not just the past few years, but over the past 10 years is massive. The demographics of major cities
relative to
Europe,
their population.
Yeah, in other words, you really notice the difference if you're walking through the streets of Paris or whatever, or even smaller cities like Marseille, in a way that you just do not know. It's not like
because
that
the U.S. is huge, obviously, and we have 330 million people, whereas they're a fraction. Their populations are a fraction of ours, so it's much more noticeable when you have a couple million coming in.
Yeah,
they did,
and also it's also more noticeable. The people are more striking because they have a lot of sub-Saharan Africans coming in. Whereas we get like sort of
those sneaky Latinos. They look almost white sometimes.
We get the taupe people. Yeah. So.
That's true. Yes, because a lot of Latinos can kind of blend in with the white population, Ted. I always joke with my Mexican friends back home. I have many of them who, people don't know that they're Latina. And so sometimes people will be talking badly about them, but they're American-born Latinas, but
they hear people talking anti-Hispanic crap.
Anti-Hispanic rhetoric, and they're like, they'll turn around and be like, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. My last name is whatever."
So then they get to be like Steve Martin in The Jerk, where he hears someone talking racist stuff, and he's like, like, "Excuse me, I am a Negro," but he doesn't say that. And Steve Martin is the whitest person who has ever existed.
That is true. But anyway, we'll be talking more about this in detail tomorrow, so you guys don't want to miss that one if you're into
we'll have an expert
German
come in
politics.
To talk about this. It'll be good.
Yeah, he's
from Germany.
From Germany. I forget the area, but anyway, let's move on.
All right. Today's the 3rd anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. The invasion has left over 1 million people dead or injured on both sides. The anniversary coincides
mostly Ukraine.
That's true. Coincides with Trump's increasingly critical rhetoric towards Zelensky, which has alarmed U.S. allies and some in Trump's own party. Trump's called the Ukrainian leader a dictator without elections, blamed him for the Russian invasion, and asserted that it's not very important for Zelensky to be part of peace talks. I would agree with all of it except that last part. Now, I mean, you gotta, obviously, the Ukrainians have to be at the table. During a radio interview, after being prodded repeatedly by the host, Trump acknowledged that Russia attacked Ukraine, but insisted that it was preventable because Russia could have been talked out of that so easily. Well, that's true. Zelensky has pushed back against Trump's attacks, but also added a new dynamic when he said that he would be willing to step down if it meant that the war would end or Ukraine could get into NATO. Republicans are largely, what a clown, are largely placing their faith in Trump to wind down the war as prospects look dim for further aid to Ukraine in Congress. That became clear at the CPAC convention just last week, where speakers dismissed the need for more money to Ukraine at a time when the party is focused on slashing spending. In America, support for Ukraine has been dropping. Late last year, Gallup found that half of Americans want to end the war as soon as possible, even if it means letting Russia keep territory that it captured from Ukraine. Nearly as many Americans, 48%, say that the war should go on until Ukraine can reclaim its territory. Well, okay, so that's
never going to happen.
Never. But it was the first time that the survey showed more people prioritizing a quick end over restoring Ukraine's territories. So, I mean, look, nobody really... this is just going to continue to drop. I mean, this is just sort of, it's not even specific to this war. Whenever the U.S. is involved in a war, when it looks like it's going well, like let's say a great example of that would have been the Gulf War, which went very well, very quickly, and came to a quick end. That was a popular war. Americans like wars like that. Like, we win, we get in there, we win, we leave, the end.
Right.
But Americans don't like wars of attrition like Afghanistan that grind on endlessly with no clear goal. And that's what this one looks like. And, and it's like, again, it's really hard to justify sending all that money overseas when we have so many pressing needs that are going unaddressed here at home.
Yeah, look, I disagree that I feel like Ukraine it'd be nice if they could come to the table and talk, but certainly not this moron that's currently the president, because I agree with the Russian sentiment that he is officially out of office.
Yeah.
The power should be ceded to the speaker of their house. That's what their laws say.
With President Putin, I would say, look, sir, this is just this is their regime, right? This is their government. You got to just deal. It's like once you start getting into, Zelensky's like, well, I don't want Putin to be president of Russia.
I don't want. No, but the thing is,
like, this is who you've got.
The spoils of war go to the victor, right? Like, and they're not the victors. And the main players.
The main point here. The main point is getting rid of NATO.
The main players at the table, though, are Putin and Trump.
The Zelensky problem is going to solve itself, Manila. When there's an election, he's gone. So,
that's why he's trying to thwart the whole thing by being like, well, just let us into NATO and I'll cede power right now. I'll do it right now. It's like, dude, you're kind of missing the whole point. The war started because you wanted to join NATO.
Right.
That's the whole point.
That's a non-starter.
Right.
And by the way, I have had this discussion so many times. I'm still waiting for one person, just an ordinary person. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be in the media. You don't have to be a politician. I want to hear one person who supports Ukraine who disagrees with the following statement, that if the U.S. were in the same position, it would not invade. In other words, Canada joins the Warsaw Pact if it still existed. And suddenly our neighbor right on our border is a member of an anti-American military alliance in which any attack on one is an attack on all. So that if we have a problem with Canada, that the French have to launch ICBMs at us. No American president would do anything other than invade. It's not even liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican.
It would never be acceptable.
Communist,
ever.
Fascist. We would have to. You just couldn't tolerate that on your border. You just couldn't.
It would never, ever be allowed. That's, I mean,
And
because
it's kind of like, well,
we have no shoe on the other foot,
technically Canada's an independent country. They can do what they want. But get real. I mean, look at what the U.S. did when little tiny Grenada was getting sassy and they were socialist, and Reagan's like, yeah, you got to go. Or the missiles in Cuba.
Shoe
Cuba was
on
an
the other
independent
foot.
country. They could do whatever they wanted. But, Kennedy's like, yeah, no.
No, even Kennedy, like, this is a shoe on the other foot problem that no one seems to be able to empathize. And
no one has said that the U.S. would let it go. No one.
Because they know, like, that is an undeniable fact. But the whole negotiations of, allegedly Trump and Putin about to meet very, very soon. And I think that's part of, the next story about, Emmanuel Macron coming here, is he's trying to thwart that. And he's trying to buy time. Just like Zelensky's trying to buy time, he's saying that he's going to step down if NATO allows Ukraine to join, because this gives him an off-ramp, Ted, to avoid embarrassing re-elections, because he will lose. I mean, I don't think he has 4% support like Trump said last week. I don't think it's that low, but not too far off either. I think Zelensky is trying to give himself an off-ramp, trying to save face, trying to avoid having to do elections. And literally trying to figure out a way he can get to his Lake Como estate with his wife's mother, who's already waiting there with, yachts and whatever. He's just trying to figure a way out. I don't think he needs to be part of these conversations, because it's going to be null and void.
Well, he does.
Look at the stupid laws he's passed.
He needs one security guarantee for himself.
For himself.
Because
his family.
Because otherwise the FSB is coming to look for him, right? And he's going to have he's going to be out the window, or he's going to be like,
he might be fishing at the lake,
or polonium tea, or whatever.
He'll be fishing at the lake, and he'll just fall over, drown.
If he gets that approval, if Putin says, "Don't worry, it's cool," then that's it. He can take that to the bank. That's good enough.
Yeah, let's go on to Macron, because I think this is. Yeah, he'll be here in about 90 minutes, supposedly.
Okay, French President
probably already landed.
Emmanuel Macron will meet Trump today in D.C., where he's expected to present a European plan for peace in Ukraine. That should prove interesting. European leaders were stunned last week by Trump's abrupt reversal on alliances. I don't know why they were stunned. Trump said all along this is exactly what he was going to do. Macron wants Trump to understand that Russia poses an existential threat to Europe. France and Britain. Yeah, because Russia's definitely going to invade England. Europe's only nuclear powers are said to be likely ready to provide a European military force, including boots on the ground and naval ships in the Black Sea, to secure a peace deal in Ukraine. Combining military, financial, and humanitarian aid, Europe has given more than the U.S. for the war in Ukraine. Suckers. Many European nations say they're prepared to increase defense spending after the wake-up call that the U.S., an ally of 80 years, may not have their backs in the future. The U.S. has their backs. The U.S. just doesn't want to continue the stupid war that never should have started in the first place. That's all.
Like, I hope Trump
understand.
Doesn't listen.
I really hope Trump doesn't listen too much to
Macron.
Because
I don't understand
Macron,
why.
I don't know what's up with him. And also, I got to tell you, Trump reads opinion polls, and he knows that Macron is a dead man walking.
He's on his way out. He's a lame duck.
And if he wasn't, he couldn't run for re-election and win. I mean,
no, not at all. Like, I really don't know, Ted, if at this point these European leaders, like the new guy in Germany, Merz, if Merz is genuine, or even von der Leyen we're looking at, or Macron, do they mean a Starmer? Do they really genuinely believe that Vladimir Putin wants to reconstitute the USSR? Like, do they genuinely believe that? Like,
or more, and go into Western Europe?
Right. Like, this is like.
No, I mean, here's the thing that's really
I can't
funny.
understand
People always
it.
talk about like how militarily expansionist Russia is. I'm like, okay, so you know how there's books that show like maps of like empires and how they grow and how they contract, like they're like history book map books
that are unchangeable, not like the internet.
So the thing is, okay, Russia has not militarily expanded since the 19th century. I mean, it just doesn't invade other countries. And like
Right.
I swear
They're
to
like,
God,
oh,
on
but
my
10 years
Facebook,
ago, Georgia, 12
this
years
one
ago.
dude said, well, and that's like, they didn't even.
It's the same thing.
That was
It was the
that,
same thing. It was
yeah,
over NATO. It was the
yeah.
same freaking thing.
And also,
So,
it was
and
about a
it's
buffer
like,
zone, also, but it
right,
wasn't like a
same
full-fledged
problem.
invasion. And then, like the
No.
thing, yeah, it's just like, oh, they want to, they want to go into all these other countries. It's like, no, not really. I
No.
mean, like,
What evidence?
and
Like, there is
Putin has
no
repeatedly
evidence in the
said
past 100
that putting the
years.
Soviet Union back together would be stupid. He doesn't want to.
He
Russia,
actually wasn't a fan of the Soviet Union
no,
anyways.
not at all. No, he doesn't
He was a
want to.
child of that era. He didn't want it. He actually didn't like it. And that's why I
But
don't
also, they
get.
talk about things like Russia invaded Chechnya. Okay, so Chechnya is in Russia. Okay, so that's like the U.S. invades Ohio.
Like, what people don't get is Vladimir Putin, not because I know the dude, but from everything I've ever read about him, he's a capitalist.
Yeah.
He likes money.
Yeah,
he likes
and
business.
by the way, all my cartoonist colleagues always draw Putin and Russia as if it was still the Soviet Union, with like hammers and sickles and the bear and all that. I'm like, what are you doing?
Not at all. He
It's
was
just
not
not
a
true.
fan. He was not a fan of Mikhail Gorbachev. He was not, but not in any way. Not and even his predecessor Boris Yeltsin, he had differences in opinion on how to govern because he was his junior, right?
Oh, he had contempt. Putin had contempt for Yeltsin because he was a drunken clown.
Yes, and it made the country look foolish. But anyway,
yeah.
I don't get why the Western world hasn't moved on in their depiction of who Vladimir Putin actually is when he's literally a Christian conservative.
It's propaganda.
Capitalist.
It's propaganda, man.
He's a Christian conservative capitalist. Like that's that's literally just point blank. That's all he is. He's a Christian conservative capitalist and democratically elected.
He tried to join NATO. Early on in his presidency, he reached out. So he was not president yet, but he was
during
a high
Clinton.
official. Yeah, under Clinton, he asked Bill Clinton, "Can I join NATO?" And Clinton's like,
we joke about this all the time.
We always joke about it.
Like,
and
hey, Bill, can I come hang out?
When he was mayor of St. Petersburg, he changed all of the street signs to English and Russian because he was like, "Oh, we're the future
he
is
was
to be
actually a
tied in with the
fanboy.
West. We want to be completely part."
He used to be a fanboy of America.
We told him to fuck off because we needed him as an enemy. You're not playing your role. You're not being
when he was young.
Evil enough.
When he was young, he was actually a fanboy of the West. He liked American culture, Western culture, and Eastern. Obviously, he's into jiu-jitsu, judo.
Fidel Castro wrote a fan letter to the president of the United States when he was a young man, saying how much he admired the U.S. and the U.S. told him to fuck off because he was socialist.
Yeah.
Ho Chi Minh. At his inauguration, first there were American flags at his inauguration because he thought the U.S. was anti-imperialist or anti-colonialist, I should say. Yeah.
Oh man.
Which they pretended to be after World War II.
Yeah, I mean, but poor Ho Chi Minh didn't realize like, I guess at that point, news couldn't spread about like Puerto Rico or Guam yet to Vietnam for him to know.
Right.
Like, the U.S. is kind of expansionist and imperial and colonial. So, but this is back then. He couldn't know during the Vietnam War that this is how these territories are governed. But anyway, I just am afraid.
Let's talk about Greenpeace.
Oh, last thing, Macron, when he comes, Ted, do you think he's gonna influence Trump to go in the direction?
Well,
because
Trump has a reputation.
Last person to chirp in his ear.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, Trump has that reputation, right? Like whoever the last person in his office, he tends to listen to. And I hope that's not the case now. Or I hope someone comes in right after Macron. So
I hope Tulsi Gabbard runs in there afterward and is like, no, ignore everything he said. Wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. Here's the whole 3-ring binder of why everything Emmanuel Macron just said was wrong.
I mean, I got to say, if I'm Trump, I don't see what Macron and Merz can offer him or the U.S. that makes anything that can be appealing. You know, all they're offering is a continuation of more of the same. I mean, nothing. It'll grind on, and I don't think, and he doesn't want that. He just doesn't.
I don't think Trump wants
and
that.
You could say he should, but he doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think so. All
right. Greenpeace is in trouble. There's a trial set to begin today in North Dakota that could force the environmental organization to shut down. The company behind the Dakota Access Pipeline, called Energy Transfer, sued Greenpeace and other activists in federal court back in 2017. Energy Transfer claimed that the thousands of protesters who camped near the construction site for months delayed the start of the pipeline, and poor babies, it increased their cost by at least $300 million. A federal lawsuit by the company was dismissed, but then it filed another one in North Dakota State Court in 2019. That's the one going to trial today. The pipeline company's lawsuit claims that Greenpeace and the others engaged in an unlawful and violent scheme to cause financial harm to Energy Transfer, physical harm to its employees and infrastructure, and to disrupt and prevent Energy Transfer's construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Greenpeace counters that the lawsuit is designed to silence free speech, but vows to continue in its campaign against fossil fuels and their climate warming solution. Greenpeace USA says that if it loses in North Dakota, the organization could face financial ruin, ending 50 years of environmental activism. Greenpeace argues that Energy Transfer is being disingenuous about the purpose of the lawsuit, which the company denies. The case is simple. Big Oil wants to silence its critics, says Sushma Raman, interim executive director of Greenpeace USA. She says Energy Transfer is abusing the legal system to silence critics by filing a strategic lawsuit against public participation, a SLAP case. I have thoughts about SLAPs, but I've talked about that enough times before that I'm not going to get into that now. This reminds me a little bit of the situation with my neighbor, Steve Donziger, who was a environmental attorney who won a multi-billion-dollar settlement against ExxonMobil, which was found guilty in an Ecuadorian court of having poisoned the environment for local indigenous Ecuadorians. And they flipped the switch using their incredible wealth and political power to basically make him, he was the plaintiff's lawyer. They turned him into a defendant and basically alleged completely falsely that he had somehow bribed the judge in Ecuador to, which, by the way, if that were true, it would be for the Ecuadorian courts to pursue, not an American court. But it wasn't true, obviously. And anyway, he ended up in house arrest, really near where I live. He was in prison. Then he was released to house arrest. I visited him in his apartment. I mean, these oil companies are fucking ruthless. And
they have buku bucks.
They have all the money in the world.
It's the same playbook, Ted, that the U.S. government employs, like they did to our friend John Kiriakou, right? Mm-hmm. The same thing is that they will just drain all your resources until you're flat broke, until you can't fight back anymore.
Yeah, do you remember that? Do you remember Kiriakou's what he found in discovery was that one of the AG at the time was told by the prosecutors, we don't have anything on Kiriakou. He's probably not guilty. And they said, charge him anyway, make him defend himself so he'll go bankrupt.
That's the whole idea. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening here with Greenpeace. Obviously, they're the fiercest of all the activists, Ted. I gotta say, they will go out there.
Earth First is probably more militant.
You think so? I don't know. These guys will go out there.
These guys are bigger.
Against whalers and get fucking hosed with giant whaling ships hosing them down with seawater
and they get rammed by the Japanese ships.
Oh yeah, this is they are some brave ass people. And listen, I know some people that were out there during the protest, both as reporters and people protesting during the pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline, and from what I've seen, there hasn't been enough environmental reports and studies done, because these pipes would literally pose a threat to the viable drinking water for some of these the native population there, right? The indigenous people who their territories are are on either side of what this pipeline would be, like that's just shit, because now you're separating parts of their territory, right? Their sovereign territory, and you're putting both sides of their water rights at risk. I just feel like this is, I don't know, a shitty thing that this company is doing, because they have effectively lost, and certainly lost the PR fight. But now they're more emboldened to do this because Trump is back in office, and
That's
he's
true.
like, drill, baby, drill. And I think this,
and look, they may
it's
have
not
the
a good
law
thing.
on their side. I mean, it is certainly true that they lost a lot of money. I'm sure that's true.
Sure.
And it is also true that the goal was to impede the project. And so I guess the argument would be, like, you engage in civil disobedience. The price of civil disobedience is that, you know, you may face consequences in the courts. There's no guarantee that you won't. And it's not really, I don't think the anti-SLAPP statute is going to help Greenpeace very much, because that's really for, like, you know, people who are engaged in media statements and First Amendment rights. It's not really for street level activism, which is what we're talking about here.
But I mean, wouldn't that be First Amendment right if you're being an activist?
True, but then there's the delay of the project over the course of so long. I mean, certainly, you know, this energy company did suffer a financial setback as a result of these protests. There's no question about that.
Sure, there's their water. See, if you're looking on the map here, that's the Standing Rock Reservation.
Mhm.
Like, it cuts right through their water source, and that's, you know, I'd need to see more details of, like, an environmental impact
Well,
study.
I think that should probably be their defense. There is a doctrine in the law where if you are allowed to break the law, if it's to prevent a greater harm. And the classic example of that is, you're walking down the street, a house is on fire, you see a child screaming at the window, you break down the door,
You break in.
you break and enter, you burglarize the house to save the kid. Well,
And kidnap the kid.
kidnap the kid. You shouldn't be charged because you're trying to avoid a harm.
Or more like the kid that's trapped in a hot car.
For example,
you break the window.
You break the window. You hurt. So that's like, I would hope that Greenpeace's attorneys would make a similar argument. Like, listen, we were trying to save people's drinking water. Without that
right.
If that water gets contaminated, you know, they could die. So
you're at risk.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's their only river, the Standing Rock
defense.
Reservation.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I should have gone to law school, like my mom said, Ted.
Yeah, I often think that law, you know, here's the thing. I like the law, but you know what I don't like is the fact that it's all based on technicalities. It's not based on, like,
I don't like
we don't have, like my lawyers always like to tell me, it's not a justice system, it's a legal system. And
yes,
and there's a lot
correct.
of aspects of it that I don't like. And one of the big ones that I discovered in my LA Times case is that, like, you have the whole precedent idea is so stupid. It's like, basically you need to find precedent,
somebody that did it first,
right? And it's kind of like,
stupid.
Someone did it before you, but like, maybe your thing is the first time it ever
maybe
happened.
your thing
which
is
in my
the
case
first.
It kind of was. And it's like, but like, you know, that it really shouldn't be based on that.
Well, look,
just be like,
Gloria Allred.
Does this
Everybody knows who she is.
Law, yay or nay? By the way,
Gloria Allred
was on my side. So was her daughter.
Really? Well, she, you know, very famous litigator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Feminist.
she famously, a feminist, she famously said, everybody gets as much justice as they can buy.
Well, she's right.
That's simple.
Yeah.
So I don't think Greenpeace is going to be able to fight big oil.
I mean, Greenpeace has relatively deep pockets compared to you and
sure.
me, but like, compared to an oil company, forget it.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. Although it's not technically an oil company, it's a pipeline company, but same difference, whatever.
They're backed by big oil.
So. Totally. Weight loss drugs are not just slimming waists, they're shifting the economy. About 16 million people, that's 6% of all U.S. adults, take GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Wegovy. These overconsumers are already reshaping food, travel, healthcare, and other industries. There's evidence that the demographic of people on these drugs overlaps with big spenders. a group some analysts have called overconsumers. Cutting their daily calorie counts in half or more is resulting in all sorts of interesting consequences. Still coming to light, Ozempic and its cousins Mounjaro, Wegovy, and Zepbound might not be the light bulb, jet airplane, or internet, but their impact is expected to be so significant that Jan Hatzius, chief economist at Goldman Sachs, predicts that if 60 million people take the medications by 2028, GDP will rise by a full 1%, or several $1 trillion. Analysis was based primarily on the idea that healthier people mean a healthier workforce and in turn lower healthcare costs. And to put that into context,
except that you're stuck using this forever, Ted, for your lifetime.
In terms of the GDP impact, for people who don't think about this that much, economists like to see an annual increase of GDP of 2 or 3%. That's like considered a robust economy. So 1% is a big portion of that, right? It's like half of 2.
And all coming from these Wegovy and Ozempic people. And so the article that I found this in was published in Washington Post. And it's a very long article, but they go into detail. Obviously, we didn't go through the entire article, but the detail of it was the fact that there is a personality type that is the user of Ozempic. And they tend to be what WAPO is calling the overconsumer. And part of how they were calculating all of this was that these are people that, let's say they were extremely obese. Let's say they lost 100 pounds, and they highlight a guy that did. He lost like a grand total of 100 pounds in 2 years. And that guy is now spending over $100,000 a year. Obviously, he has the disposable income to do that on things that he never did before, such as vacations, fancy clothing, like look good, feel good type, stuff that he's spending his money on. And this is a straight older white man. I don't know where or why I thought I got the impression that he was an attorney for some reason, but anyway, he, along with a lot of these other people, are people that have a lot of, discretionary income to make it rain on buying, fancy cold pressed juices, to buying high-end cuts of meat. And they're going into a different lifestyle that is considered a high-end lifestyle. So that is part of why the economy, especially with like the vacationing and like health and fitness economy, those environments are going to see a ton of money flood in, because if you're looking at 60 million Americans who are now suddenly thin and they want to feel good and go, look good because they've lost all this weight, that's a lot of money that these people have in discretionary spend, Ted. But as you and I were talking about before we went on air, let me remind everybody that this magic shot you're going to have to use for the rest of your life. And it's not been around for so long. There's that. Your brain also needs a certain level of fat and cholesterol in order to fight, to combat against like degenerative brain issues like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. You can't your body needs a certain level percentage of body fat. And these people shedding off all that fat this fast, I feel like we're going to see, 20 years from now, I predict a huge rise in degenerative brain problems.
I predict that you are right. I also predict that cancer will come out of this. I mean, there's never been any kind of just take this magic pill or whatever, right, in terms of dieting that hasn't had some, really, really awful consequences. I mean, remember Fen-Phen? I mean, yes. Basically it's like sign up for Ozempic now, and I guarantee you in 15 years, you'll be watching, cable news, and it'll be like, did you take Ozempic back in 2025? It's like, you could get a big cash settlement if you're still alive.
Yes. I enjoyed Fen-Phen, Ted.
LLP.
I dabbled in the Fen-Phen, not because I was ever overweight. That wasn't the problem. I liked the upper effect.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's bad. It was bad for you, right? And your liver. So.
Well, yeah. people did,
So there's that.
what's the word? Die. That's the word.
So I stopped playing around with that because I didn't, weight wasn't an issue for me. I just enjoyed the upper effect, and I could get so much done, Ted. It was, wow, in my 20s, man. But again, something I dabbled in, not something I planned on using for the rest of my life, which is what I don't know if these people that use this stuff, if they have considered that it's one thing to do it if you're a celebrity and you're trying to fit into that dress for the Oscars or whatever, shed the extra 10 pounds or whatever.
If you're a celebrity, hire a trainer. I mean, that's what they do.
They do. But this, I feel like all these new magic, everything magic in this little bottle or little pill or whatever, just be wary.
Yeah, I have no proof. By the way, I have absolutely no proof that it's dangerous. It's just instinct.
Oh, I don't either.
It's like let's put it this way: this could be the very first time that something like this happens, and it's fine. It could be the very first time.
Could be
this time.
Could be.
Don't worry, Lucy's not going to pull that football away from you, Charlie Brown. She's going to leave it right there. You're going to be able to kick it. Field goal. It's going to be amazing. Enjoy.
We could be wrong, and this could be, the first time in history that big pharma is just omniscient and they know everything that you need and how you need to feel good and look good and benevolent. They're just benevolent. They're there to just so you feel good and look good and live a nice, long, healthy life, and not because you're going to need any of their drugs.
All in the thin and trim with a flat tummy and beautiful sculpted
Totally
legs.
Trust big pharma, Ted. I totally trust them.
Yeah, because they've never done anything. They've never lied to us.
It's safe and effective.
No, of course.
Safe and effective. Yeah. All right. That'll do it for headlines. Let's get into our last topic, our main topic. I'm going to go ahead and hit the jaws.
Even before the election, the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times read Trump's poll numbers and decided to censor their own endorsements for Kamala Harris. Then the tech bros who run social media donated to his inauguration. ABC News and Meta decided to punt in court and pay out big defamation claims that Trump probably would have lost. And, we could call them bribes if we wanted. And we do want. Trump's bullying chilling the media? It certainly looks like it. MSNBC has now canceled Joy Reid's primetime TV show. In another indication that journalists are under siege, a Mississippi judge ordered a newspaper to take down its editorial on a local political matter. So we're going to talk about, and Manila is fresh from CPAC, where the big names did not bother to engage reporters. We're going to talk about the muzzling of the news media, the supposed watchdog of democracy. Is there a Trump effect, Manila?
Yes, and I would say some of it is good. That's my first instinct, is that, not because Elon completely freed the bird, did not completely free Twitter, because he, does take it out on, I guess, people that he doesn't like. Okay, fine. He owns it, right? It's a private company. He's the owner. Okay, I get it. We're living in an Elon world. But for the most part, we're not seeing the same censorship, I would say, as we were, as revealed by the Twitter files, right? By like Matt Taibbi and the like, from the first iteration of Twitter. And I think that was like the first foray into a new media landscape that is not quite, I don't know that the media was ever free, Ted. That's the problem, at least not in my lifetime. But it was freer, I would say, than let's say from, I would say 2016 up until 2 years ago, right? Like 2022, 23. So in that 6-7 year span, we saw not only a contraction of media ownership to be owned by a handful of companies, including social media outlets being owned by just a couple of big tech bros, but they all, because it's owned by a handful of companies or a handful of people, they all kind of sound the same. They all kind of say the same thing. We have, Joy Reid on there, MSNBC, owned by Comcast, that owns like everything on regular television or cable television. They've all said the same stuff, and it was all propaganda. And I know the intent of the tech bros coming to kiss Trump's ring in the last couple of months was meant to be the opposite of that, I suppose. But, is the media really free? I'm going to say no. And I'm not going to blame today's media, like what I saw this weekend at CPAC on the last day. I got a new understanding from my return from CPAC, and it's this. Now that Trump is saying, the media is free, and to be fair, Ted, he never went after anybody the first presidency, right? He didn't. Rachel Maddow said, "I'm going to get thrown into a camp. I'm going to like." Rachel Maddow said all this crazy stuff. If Trump comes to power, I'm going to be thrown in prison. Okay, no, lady, that didn't happen, wasn't going to happen, and he's never threatened to do that. But what I did learn from CPAC is that even if the social media companies freed speech, the actual newsmakers, for example, at CPAC, the people that were there to give the speeches, not a single one of them came out to Media Row. And I went day 1 and I went day 3.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single one of them bothered. Like the old days, I used to go to CPAC like years ago, like 2014, 15, 16. And you would see a good, I would say a good 30%, like 1/3 of them would come out after their speeches and mingle and mix with the press and not be afraid to take questions. I think what we're seeing at CPAC was that none of these people want to answer to the fourth estate, that they want to be able to issue diktats and, repeat Trump talking points without any pushback, without any ramification. So is that really a free press? I don't know, Ted. If they're not willing to talk, all we can do is analyze and, as a press, analyze and guess what, let's say Robert Fizzo, who was one of the speakers, physically present. I can only guess what he meant, in his speech. I can only surmise, right? It'd be different if I spoke to him, but none of these people came out to speak. To not even any of the TV networks, like Newsmax was there sponsoring everything, and I didn't see one big speaker come out to Media Row, not one. So I think that's the way that they're going to kind of censor, is by only talking to select press when the newsmakers feel like it, and when they have, and it's going to go to their softball chosen outlets, if that makes sense.
I agree with that. I think that what's going on is that legacy media organizations that had tremendous power, I'm just going to choose one randomly, CBS News. Think about the power that, like, say, being on 60 Minutes had. I mean, here, I'll give you a personal example. I had a column, my second column ever to appear in the New York Times op-ed page. It was in the 90s. I probably received 2,000 or 3,000 handwritten letters as a result of that column, and I got an offer for a 6-figure offer for my next book because of writing that column. Now I appear on the very quite frequently on the op-ed page of the Wall Street Journal, which is frankly a better and more prestigious opinion page than the New York Times. It's certainly better written, and nothing happens. It's like, sure, people will comment on it, but you'll get a few hundred comments in the online, and it just disappears. I mean, so right. The problem is that media has been atomized, right? So there's all these blogs, there's all these podcasts, there's our show, there's a million things out there now, and none of them is really quite as important. There's no big 900-pound gorilla anymore So you can pick and choose. And like, can you live without, say, the New York Times? If you're, a politician, 100% you can live without them. And what you do is this is about promoting your message to a friendly audience. People are tending to gravitate towards sources that, it's not like everybody watched Walter Cronkite when I was a kid. It's like people are gravitating towards, like, if you're a conservative, you're watching Newsmax, or, if you're a lefty, you might follow Joy Reid to her Substack or whatever. The point is that you're going to be, so people you're just able to narrow cast your vision to the audience that you specifically want. So why do you have to bother with mainstream or talk to anyone who's going to ask you an uncomfortable question or be even mildly annoying? It's like basically they don't need us anymore. And it's technological. It's just the way the media landscape has been democratized. And that means with no 900-pound gorilla, the balance of power between the same number of 454 congressmen that existed before, and now the 5 million media outlets that did not exist before has shifted, right? I mean, now they have the advantage.
Yeah. Like, okay, so for example, with Joy Reid or MSNBC, and I know you were friendly with them, and
I have my complaints about MSNBC. Obviously, it's corporate. I mean, it's corporate Democrats.
Look at those two, right? Like, look at Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, right? Like, so all of their numbers are down. Everybody, all of their numbers are down, no matter what ratings company you use, Nielsen, Ipsos, whoever, Quinnipiac, everybody. It's very clear that their numbers went up during Trump's first administration, but as soon as he left office and Joe Biden came in, the numbers fell. And what's more interesting, I think, is this time around, with Trump coming back to power, you would think you would see a rise again, because MSNBC was largely seen as, the anti-Trump network. But something happened, Ted. What do you think happened? Why did Joy Reid, for example, there was an attrition of 48% of viewership literally the next day after Trump's win, his landslide win. 48% just dropped off the rolls for her and didn't come back. And we're a quarter out from that victory.
Well,
they never came back to her.
I suspect that there's probably more than two, but I think there's two main factors going on. First of all, the election was over, and sort of generically, the interest in politics diminished. I mean, I noticed, for example, our numbers drop after the election and then come back after the Trump inauguration. So as interest in politics picked up again. So I suspect that was part of it. Also, I think Democratic media, like epitomized by programs like Joy's, and MSNBC was the absolute epitome of this. They were discredited. I mean, just imagine if you're a loyal Democrat and you're watching MSNBC day after day after day, during, let's say, the 3 months building up to the November election. And they keep telling you, we're going to win. Trump's in trouble. Everyone sees him for the despot that he is. We're going to wipe the floor with these fucking Republicans. Trump's going to prison. Fuck them. And it was so triumphalist. And, there was very little. I watched this stuff. There was almost no doubt, but Trump could win. They didn't talk about that, right? But
did they believe it? Were they genuine?
They really thought that Biden and then, the very joyful Kamala Harris was going to win. They said it over and over and over. Well, if you're told over and over, basically it's like this. Donald Trump faked it in terms of being rich until he made it. He made it because he became president. But he made it. Ultimately, he made it. Faking it until you make it works. Okay, but if you fake it and then you don't make it, you look like an idiot. And that's exactly what happened here. The Democrats, they faked it all throughout the election. They all had the numbers. The campaigns knew the numbers. Kamala's campaign knew she was going to lose weeks
Right.
before she lost. But that information had to have trickled in to 30 Rock, right? But it somehow they decided not to tell the public. If we keep just pushing the propaganda, then liberal voters will turn out in bigger numbers. We won't depress turnout, and who knows, we might pull a rabbit out of a hat. I really think
breaking right
it's
now.
like it's like if you followed a stock, if you followed a guy who recommends stocks or a lady who recommends stocks, and they're always wrong.
Jim Cramer.
You stop. You cancel your subscription to their newsletter, right? That's what this was.
Look, even Lester Holt, this is breaking right now. Lester Holt, anchor of NBC Nightly News for a decade, will leave the show this summer. I don't know if that's him retiring, resigning, but all over the MSNBC and /NBC ecosystem, everybody is like getting moved around. Like Alex Wagner. Alex Wagner is getting bumped. Rachel Maddow Gross is coming back.
She's as close as they have to someone who's a star.
Right.
And
I guess everybody else is like down.
We need to distinguish between firing and having your show canceled. In the NBC, ecosystem, and this might not be quite as true going forward, but historically, what's happened is if they cancel your show, they back burner you. They bring you on to do fill-ins and weekends.
Yeah, Alex Wagner is getting bumped down to that. She's becoming correspondent and contributor.
So they rotate you around. I mean, Joy's already she's already churned through several different iterations of programming in her career. So at NBC, they keep you on retainer. I don't know if they keep paying you as much or if they just...
Her show pays her a $3 million contract. $3 million. So I don't feel sorry for her. I look at her. Fine. She had bad takes. I feel like she was female Al Sharpton. She was constantly race baiting. It was constantly like, let's shit on white people. Too much black girl magic. Like she's just harping on the same stuff over and over and over.
They're told to say that. The other day I watched Jen Psaki claim that.
Are they though?
Jen Psaki's on the rise. Told Jon Stewart that they don't tell her what to say. I'm like, okay, they tell you, they might not tell you what to say, but they tell you what not to say. And I know that from personal experience at MSNBC. So as we talked about last week, they tell you you're not allowed to criticize the DNC, the Democratic Party, corporate Democrats, Hillary
That's
Clinton.
What happened to Ed Schultz over Hillary Clinton.
So the thing is, like, they don't have the ability, for example, to bring on real lefties on their shows. Like on MSNBC, for example, you're not going to see me. I used to be on all the time. During the Bush years, it's like they're not going to bring in, Chris Hedges or, people who are actually on the left, Kiriakou. They're not going to do that. So that's
that's why their numbers are like just hugely trounced out by Fox. I don't know if it's just a numeric thing, Ted. I mean, as the elections would have it, right?
Also, Fox
Trump
is far more
winning.
Fox is also, frankly, a better packaged network. It's far more entertaining. I mean, if you just take the politics out, the ideology.
Are you saying the staff looks prettier?
Well, that's not what I was saying. I mean, that might be true, but that's not what I was thinking. A
lot of legs over at Fox.
I don't really need, for me, beauty does not mean you look like you're going to be in the Waffen SS, like on Fox News. But I mean, they're definitely, it's boring. I mean, you tune into MSNBC, there will be a long period of just a head talking, and that's it. There's no graphics. There's bad
production.
There's bad production. There's not like much going on in the background. You don't have a lot of B-roll. They don't do a lot of interviews with interesting guests. It's boring. It's dull. Fox is constantly elevating the churn, right? Like, and it's always like they always have a breaking news alert, a Fox News alert, which may not be really breaking news. It's just like what's going on.
Look,
but they're always trying to keep it interesting. Mhm.
Laura Ingraham, I mean, these are measured by the thousands of viewers, right? So we're looking at over 300,000 viewers
She's on
for Laura
Fox.
Ingraham
Mhm.
at 7. Out front with Aaron Burnett on CNN, she's at 67,000. That's really low. And Joy Reid at 86,000. But you look across the board at MSNBC. I mean, Fox is kicking everybody's ass.
And CNN is boring too. Not as boring as MSNBC, but it's boring.
These are just Gutfeld. Oh my God, Gutfeld has a 344.
By the way, the other thing that Fox also gives space for development. Like when Gutfeld started his humor show, it was itself a joke because it was doing so poorly when it started, right? And it languished for a long time. I mean, no one was watching that show. No one thought it was any good. But
so is it that they gave him time?
They gave him time, and it slowly built its audience, and he figured out how to do it. It's kind of like reminds me of the X-Files. The network wanted to cancel it because it wasn't doing well the first few years, and they couldn't find something to replace it with, so it just stayed through attrition, and then it found its way, and it became a huge hit, right? So sometimes things just take time.
This is that key demo for people outside of the media industry. 2554 is the key demo because you're probably employed. You can buy things. You can buy shit. Like Ozempic.
As much as you want.
As much Ozempic as you want. And this is that target demo. So among all of these different shows, man, I'm just looking now at the numbers from Adweek, Ted, and I'm floored. Having obviously been in the TV race for many years, like little RT America, who has a fraction of the budget of these people, we were hauling in some pretty good numbers, but God forbid people hear the truth just because the set and our paychecks came from the Kremlin. But truly, nobody ever told us what to say. Nobody ever
what not to say.
Or nothing was prohibited. I mean, other than F-bombs, obviously, but I mean, because we were on TV. But outside of that, I wrote my own scripts. I didn't have to clear it with anybody. Other than fact checking, I didn't have to clear it with anybody. Anything I was going to say off the cuff, there was none of that. And our guest bookers, we never pre-interviewed our guests to see what their take was, and to say, oh, can you kind of, massage it this way, which is what MSNBC, CNN, Fox, they all do that. And if they find out, the bookers find out that your take goes against their narrative and you're, hard line on that issue, like let's say Palestine is your thing. If you're not willing to fall in line, you're not going to be on air. That's just how it is. And no wonder, just broadly across all of mainstream media, Ted, that it's dying. And I think they deserve it. They deserve it. I think the days of legacy media are numbered, and the clock is ticking. And I think this is where this podcast space, the live streaming space, this is the future of news. Nobody trusts them. Any of these guys, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, nobody trusts them, Ted. They've lied to everybody for years. And the viewers now know. And the viewers now know who owns them and how they're all interconnected. And they're, and they all have these big shareholder meetings. And it's really the shareholders that tell them what can be on air. It's not what's really newsworthy. It's what is going to make them money and what's not going to take away their advertisers. Who would have thunk that defense funded so many of these news companies, Ted, or USAID?
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, so I think maybe, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think, Manila, what's going on is that the Trump effect has been basically to be one of the last, dominoes that just basically fell for legacy media. It's sort of like legacy media has been in deep trouble for a long time. They've made a lot of mistakes. And the Trump effect has been basically to kill some of the dinosaurs that were still standing. I think the bloodbath will continue. I don't think there's any room in the middle. I think no one cares about moderation, centrism, bland, milquetoast, anything. The future is far left and far right. That's it. I mean, that's not even the future. That's the present. And as soon as investors decide to put their money in those kind of media outlets, they're going to start to see some returns.
Yeah, I think we're at the precipice of a brand new breed of media, and I think it needs to happen. And maybe in the future, Ted, maybe we will see, everything is cyclical, like fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like bell bottoms and big baggy pants are back in style. This is what kids wore. This is what kids wore. I remember in high school in the 90s, kids wore big baggy jeans, and I'm so glad that they're back because they're really way more comfortable than than those skinny tight pants. Much more forgiving for all you moms, but it's like a 30-year cycle, right? I don't know if that's going to be the case for media, if it's dead for good, but I feel like it shows that not only Americans but the population around the world understands the game. They're sophisticated now. They can't be duped anymore. So either modern media
can be duped.
I don't think not like they used to in, let's say, in the 90s, for example, to rah and rally around Bill Clinton. It's not that easy to manufacture consent unanimously anymore, the way it used to be by way of the media. And maybe someday it'll come back, Ted. I don't think it will. I think it's actually it's just too many disparate views, too much money involved, and I think we're just going to see this fractured media space for at least for our lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's my impression. And Joy Reid is, I think, one of those faces that there's Clovis. One of those faces that represent something negative where people are fed up with a lot of this race conversation and too much of this DEI woke conversation, which really, really was really heavy on her show.
And boring. Because it's always the same.
Yes. Like just blah. Who wants to keep talking about race? Like, what? Is there anything else in the world, Ted? Like, can she talk about ice cream flavors? That would be more interesting than being like,
well, let me tell you,
race.
I mean, having been on Joy, I've been on her show a bunch of times, and I gotta say, and I've talked to her off the air, she's a smart woman. And,
sure, I'm not saying she's dumb.
And she's cool and interesting. I mean, I guess my point is that there's the culture of that network is toxic. If I had worked there as long as she had, I bet I'd be doing the same shit because they'd be paying me, millions of dollars a year to do the same line of crap. And after a while, you become that person. And that it sucks, actually. It's a crappy system. It's I mean, I guess at a certain point, if you agree to do it, then that's on you. And,
it's selling out, Ted.
That's what it is. I mean, fortunately for me, I have no one's offering to buy me out, Right. I don't claim to be any better than she is. I mean, no one's come to me and said, "Hey, Ted, we're going to pay you $1 million a year to sell out all your principles." I mean, I'm not, it's just nobody's ever offered.
Right. I've never been put in that position, but I will say that there was potential to be in that position when I left CBS Local, because I remember the thrill 12, 13 years ago, having Gayle King say, "Thanks for that, Manila." And I was like, "Oh my God, Gayle King said my name," because I worked for CBS. And, I was on that path until I got silenced about my reporting on GM. And this is a local CBS affiliate. And to start garnering the ire of headquarters in New York City, that's what made me leave to go to alt media in 2014, was because I thought the writing was on the wall that journalism was dead, and I think
which
Joy
clearly
Reid's,
that was true.
Yeah, and Joy Reid's, dismissal, or at least the cancellation of her show, I think shows that there is a potential chance that maybe it might be revived. I don't know. I think it's dead, but I don't know. People come back from the dead sometimes, Ted, and people get revived after they haven't been breathing for like 20 minutes,
That's true.
So is that for the case for the media? I don't know. I'm not hopeful, but maybe.
Look, also a lot is going to depend on how things go with Trump. Before we go, I wanted to get your hot take on James Carville, who, basically last year kept saying that Kamala Harris was going to win. Then after the election, he was very harsh on the Democrats and sort of echoed Bernie's talking points about what a bunch of idiots they had been and how they hadn't, they had like cut loose the working class. And then now he's saying, well, that Trumpism is already ruined. That Democrats shouldn't say anything or fight back against Trump because within 4 to 6 weeks, according to James Carville, the whole Trump ecosystem is going to collapse of its own accord and its own internal contradictions. And I'm like, I don't think the Raging Cajun is right here. I'm not saying that Trumpism can't or won't collapse. I just don't think it's going to happen nearly that quickly if it happens at all.
No. I'm gonna give it well past the first 100 days. And by the way, Ted, I think we lost Rumble a few minutes ago. I don't know what happened.
Bummer.
The feed, I think something's wrong with the feed. So
yeah, we had some issue earlier too.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but we'll figure it out post show. So we're gonna leave it there and try to figure out some technical difficulties because hey, Ted, we don't have a multi-million-dollar contract and crew to
we have to figure it out ourselves.
Imagine that. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I don't feel super bad dancing on the Readout. That's the name of her show, I think, right? The Readout.
Terrible name.
But trying to be punny with her name.
I don't like pun names. Yeah. Like every time anybody's talked about doing a show with me, it's always like something like Rall Deal or something stupid like
that. Wah, wah.
Yeah.
Well, I would feel guilty usually for dancing on somebody's grave. But in this case, because none of those bastards at MSNBC, one, stood up for RT America when the U.S. government was coming down on us, cracking down on us, they turned a blind eye and didn't give a shit. They didn't say anything about Julian Assange. They didn't give a shit. That when they used his work when it served them.
That's true.
And then when he was in prison, they didn't say shit. For not only trapped at the embassy, in prison at Belmarsh, they didn't say shit.
No.
They didn't say anything about Snowden other than being like, well, he broke these federal laws.
He's a traitor.
His traitorous actions. So I hope their whole network goes kaboom, because they're just collapsing on themselves. And I think the Raging Cajun's reading this wrong. And he's got his own podcast, by the way, with I forget who. If you go into the podcasting, wherever you get your podcast, I've actually listened to it. And James Carville and somebody, I forget who, one of his other strategic advisor buddies. And it's pretty interesting to hear them, but I think he's reading the media wrong. And it's not the space that he was in 30 years ago when he was advising Clinton. It's not that anymore. I think he knew everything about how to navigate the media space when he advised Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
But it ain't it now. I think he's got it all wrong. So we'll see.
I think he might just be too old or whatever. He
is. And God love him. I went to his thing at the Kennedy Center many, many years ago. He and his wife, they were doing, it wasn't a roast, but they were doing something with he and his wife. I think, I don't know. It was like a joke about how to be married when your politics are so different. And it was really great, right? Like they've been married, what's her name? Mary
Madeline.
Madeline.
Although she's not in the business anymore.
Yeah, but is he either? They're like 100. So
I mean, I guess it's like he's still like in the mix and that people still call him. I don't know if he gets paid. I think that but he still obviously talks to everybody.
Yeah. And he's got that podcast. Somebody's funding that podcast.
Right.
So I don't know. I think that's where the world is headed, and MSNBC, for the shit job they've done to supposedly be journalists, like, oh, well, you get what you get. And Joy Reid, sorry, sister, better luck next time. You've done better than me already, so I'm not crying for you, Argentina.
Fair, totally
that's
fair.
That. Financially, I hope you saved those $3 million a year, Joy.
Well, she probably only kept $1 million, but yeah.
Oh,
taxes.
That's right.
Agents.
Taxes, agents.
Manager.
Yep. Gee, only $1 million a year, Ted.
Well, in New York, that's not going to get you that far. But yeah, okay, good point.
Yeah, but still, hope you save your money.
No, I think if you have that kind of money coming in, if you're smart at all, you try to live relatively modestly. You don't expand into it.
All that money's going to Rachel Maddow. Rachel's getting like 20 million plus. Like that's.
I can't even. I'd be dying to know what she does with all that money. I mean, and the thing is, like someone like her, I mean, they work crazy hours, right? So they're not home. Like it's just basically she's at the office all the time.
Right.
So it's not like what are you doing with that money? What are you doing with it? I mean, there's no point building a spectacular house. I mean, even if you do, okay, but then what?
But yeah, I don't know. She's a loyalist and they're paying her for that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
She's very frustrating because she could have had class. She could have been a contender, you know.
I think she's also a sellout to the true
she's the embodiment of a sellout.
Yeah, she's a total sellout.
Those are not her politics. I mean, you're not a sellout if you're I mean, like when we worked for RT and Sputnik, you know, it wasn't a problem for me. I interrogated myself like, well, yeah. would I be pulling my my punches on Russia or Putin if I took this job? And the truth is I never had anything negative to say about Putin or Russia before, right? So it's like
and they're not nice to the gays.
I was like it's the only thing. I was like, well, it's not like I'm going to be asked to stop doing something that I want to do anyway. So who cares?
Right. I'm not compromising anything I thought or felt before. So
yeah, I don't even do work of talking really about foreign leaders or the foreign people. I don't feel like it's my place as an American to comment much on the internal affairs of other countries. I feel like
I just don't know.
I feel like the United States, that's the country I focus on.
Right. Same here. And we were not getting that type of dissection, like fair dissection, Ted, from the mainstream media. And that's why they're failing.
I know that Rachel Maddow does not believe what she's saying. I know that she's a progressive leftist, not a corporatist, a DNC shill. And
you don't think she's believed it at this point?
Well, she might believe it now, but she's only believing it because it pays the rent. This is not at all. That's not who she was at all. She was a lefty.
I used to like her during the Hurricane Katrina days.
She was a lefty.
And
I was on with her on Air
totally
America. I was on. I sat in in the same studio, like elbow to elbow with her at Air America. I remember her very well, and I know what she was.
Not the same person.
She's not the same person. Now, people can evolve politically, but it's like I don't think that's happened. I think she knows it's bullshit. Well, it's like Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh didn't believe what he was saying either. I have it on very, very reliable opinion that he voted Democratic in every election.
No.
It was just entertainment. It's just business. Yeah.
Wow.
I have another friend who's a big, widely syndicated conservative talk show host, and he just made a decision. He was a lefty like me, like far left. And he was like, talk radio in this country is conservative. I want to work in talk radio. That's what I'm going to. So he just switched up and pretends to be a right-wing Republican.
So it's a character.
It's a character. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if Joy Reid is a character or Rachel is a character, or it was a slow lurch, where your brain is impacted by TDS, because I think that's real. I've seen regular people, friends I know, because I'm fairly neutral on Trump. I don't hate him. I don't love him. I don't just whatever. He's just another politician.
I see the pros and cons. Yeah, I'm like that.
Right. I can see both. I don't love him. I don't hate him. But I think TDS is real, and I think
I
a
also don't
lot of
think he's
people.
that. The only thing that's really different between him and previous politicians is that he's more transparent. And so, and that's kind of like
more obvious.
It's the style that's driving, not the policies that are driving Democrats insane. He's so crass.
Right. He's very
Again,
icky
that's a
and very
character.
crass.
That's a character. He's not like that in real life.
Before we go, I gotta say, going back to CPAC, so I stayed there for the Trump. He closed out the show, as it were, right? He closed it out, and people will never. I don't think. I mean, I don't know who's going to sit through and watch like C-SPAN's coverage of Trump at CPAC. But I got to say, Ted, I mean, as far back as I was, and I would say it's like 60, 70 yards back from the Trump stage, that's where the press, we were corralled, right? We were an island unto ourselves. We were not allowed to. I couldn't even go in the regular general access door, Ted. They refused me entry with my media pass. I had to stay strictly in the back because I'm media. And Trump, though, he's hilarious. And I've seen him in person multiple times speaking. He's very witty. And he was like, I don't know if much of it was written down anywhere on a prompter anywhere, but he was kind of off the cuff and he was like making jokes and crap. I mean, he's a funny guy. And that's from what I've heard within Trump circles is he is actually in person a very charming and witty guy and cracks jokes, and people generally kind of like him. I mean, if people could put aside their politics and they just, didn't get offended by some of the stuff he said, he's actually the guy you want to be at a dinner party with, is probably the best way I can put it, because he will be the life of the party. He'll crack jokes, and he's actually he was very cordial to the guests that were there at CPAC, obviously, right? This is kind of his victory parade. And I think if people actually listened to the whole CPAC speech, you would find that he actually is more of a positive guy than that the media won't give him credit for. He's actually like jovial and jokey and
well,
positive.
I think that's pretty obvious.
You think so? But that's to you.
Yeah, certainly, I mean, nobody it helps MSNBC to be a New Yorker too.
Yeah, maybe
he's a consummate New Yorker. Consummate.
Yes, that's just it. It's cynical humor, which I find funny, and maybe because it's like New York humor. Like he's kind of cynical and kind of upbeat, which is weird, but very funny. So I'll just say that if you want to watch, you can find it on CPAC or C-SPAN. Oh, CPAC has it too on their own website. But having been there, that was the only time I saw the crowd riled up, Ted. The only time everybody gathered, and they were all on their feet for the whole like 40 minutes that he was up there. And other than that, the crowd was like kind of blah. It was like a blasé. Day one had a little energy, less on day two, and nobody was there on day three.
Wow. Depressing.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's just because everybody went for inauguration. And I think the conservatives are, tapped out financially it's expensive to come to DC. So, yeah. All right. That does it. We got to figure out with producer Robbie later on. I'm sorry if you guys are watching this later. The Rumble feed, I don't know what happened, but we've been having trouble with it all morning. We're going to hopefully not face this kind of trouble tomorrow, Ted. So I'll try to figure out what's going on. Right. I'm going to, look.
I had some Rumble issues over the weekend with the DMZ America podcast too.
Well-dressed nerd saying Mad Cow has spectacular houses. Oh, that's true. Yeah, when you're making $20 million a year, you don't have one house, Ted. That's true.
True.
Yeah. There it is. Yep, our Rumblers have had to move over to the dark side, to YouTube. That's what I'm popping up. Thank you, Ray. Yeah, here we are. Yep, our Rumblers had to move over to YouTube.
Oh,
That's what happened.
All right. Well,
something happened to the feed. Maybe somebody will be saying here. We'll figure it out. But yep, they're saying the Rumble feed dropped. Yep.
All right. Well, we'll put it up in the rerun.
Yeah. All right, guys. We're out of here. We've got to figure it out. We'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Bye, Joy Reid. I'm just saying.
Bye.
Adios, amigos. See you tomorrow. Bye.
See you tomorrow. Bye.